Is Kilchoman's new 10-year-old Loch Gorm something you need in your life? Well, we're going to find out today. I'm Jeff. This is Whiskey. Stick around. All right, so we have the new 2025 Loch Gorm, and as you may have surmised from the intro or the thumbnail, we now have a nice big age statement on it. It's 10 years old. Loch Gorm is one of those whiskeys that I've always had a bit of a soft spot for, despite it being not really my style. But back in the day, it very much was my style. Then again, back in the day, a lot of things about my style were quite different. I used to think that rocking a pink t-shirt, a puka shell necklace, and flannel shorts was an absolutely killer combo. Things change. By the way, keep your eyes peeled for my new upcoming fashion channel, G Sassy. Anyway, yeah, I wouldn't say that loud peat and loud sherry is my go-to style nowadays. I do still like it. I think it's got its time and its place, but it's not something I turn to very often. And I think the issue is, unless you've got the right distillate, the right master blender, and the right set of casks, you run the risk of creating a whiskey that has all the nuance of a toddler manning a foghorn. But like I said, once in a while, this style of whiskey does really work for me. It's just not something I go for too often. And yeah, I just always like the Loch Gorm. Anyway, for the 2025 batch, we have 23 casks in the mix. We've got 20 first fill and 3 refill Oloroso sherry casks. A total of 18,000 bottles were released. If you didn't know already, this is an annual core range offering. And this is the first time that they've given it a 10-year age statement. And I think that's about all the technical stuff I've got for you. Which means we can wrap up our intro, so let's not waste time. Let's jump into our review. In the meantime, if you'll kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. So as always with Kilchoman, we have very good specs here. This one comes in at 46% ABV, it's non-chill filtered, and it's natural color. For the bottle presentation, I think this looks okay. Not great. I never love these Kilchoman bottles, but this one I think does look good. I like the darker color scheme here. I would prefer this to like the Saneg bottle or the Mocker Bay bottle, for example. I like the gold accents. I think it looks a little bit more premium. It's a squat bottle, which I hope helps with earthquakes because we get a lot of them here. We'll give it 3 out of 5. This does say non-chill filtered and natural color. We get the 10-year age statement. We get some tasting notes on the back. Beyond that, not too much noise. And it's got all the info we need. Good bottle. So on the nose, this smells like a classic Loch Gorm. We get this lush, sweet sherry on top of this embery smoke. We get syrup, we get cherry cola, cherry tobacco, and some maple glazed bacon, eh? We get touches of leather in here. I also get charred meats slathered with sort of like a sweet hickory sauce, served with a Dr. Pepper, with dessert being an ice cream sundae with cherry syrup and a cherry on top. So that's fun. On the palate and finish, this gives us a really nice, lush, rounded texture here. It's really not an attack at all. This gives us more ash than the nose suggested, which for me is Kilchoman's signature note. Nobody does ash like them. This is quite oaky. We get some nice oak spice and cola notes in here. We get more of those sweet, fruity, syrupy notes. This is rich, it is sweet, but it's not cloying. I mentioned cherries earlier. There's cherry syrup, cherry jam, cherry cola. That's all in here. Also on the nose, I mentioned those charred barbecue meats. Once again, we get that on the palate. And again, with that sort of sweet hickory sauce. And let's keep going with those notes from the nose. The finish gives us, once again, an ice cream sundae. Once again, cherry syrup. We'll throw in some candied strawberries this time. Yeah, really nice. All right, so if the tasting notes are any indication, this is a dessert whiskey for peat heads. So if you don't like sweet whiskeys or you don't like sweet peat, maybe skip this one. The rest of you should be fine. That said, even though I keep describing it as sweet and syrupy, I do think that it's restrained enough to not be cloying. It's not one of those rushed, overly sweet, usually finished whiskeys that have been violated by some of the most active casks known to man. You know the type. In fact, I might have already used the word sweet too many times in this review. I'm sure some of you out there are already shaking your heads, but take it from me, someone who is himself quite sensitive to things that are too sweet. This one is good. In fact, let me switch up some of the vocabulary. Instead of calling this syrupy and sweet, instead let's say this is decadent and indulgent. Kilchoman, let me know if you need a new marketing consultant. Anyway, I do think a lot of people out there are really going to enjoy this one. I think a good chunk of people will be coming to this bottle from either the Saneg or previous versions of the Loch Gorm, so they will have some concept of what they're getting into. If you're coming here from the Saneg, maybe you're looking for a more refined, more premium version of that Kilchoman Peat Sherry combo, which this is. It is richer, it's thicker, more of those jammy cherry notes, more complexity. Oppositely, if you're coming from previous versions of Loch Gorm and maybe you just want to try the new batch, or maybe you were reeled in by the fact that we have our fancy new age statement. Either way, I think you will enjoy this one. I don't see why you wouldn't. In fact, I like it more than both of those other ones. Not obviously, but for me personally, I definitely prefer this to the Saneg, which I should. It is a more premium expression, but even if we compare this to the previous Loch Gorms, when I first popped this, I had it next to an older version, I think. I had it next to the 2022, maybe the 2023 version, and I did find this to be better. To be fair though, it was pretty close. It wasn't this huge dramatic jump in quality, and the previous releases are still very good. But yeah, this one just came off as a little bit rounder, a little bit richer, and just not quite as rough around the edges. It gave us more oak, less youth, basically what you would expect from a whiskey with a little bit of extra age. Luckily, this doesn't compromise on everything that makes Loch Gorm, so it delivers. However, and this is not a quality however, this is my preference however, this is not my go-to style, as I said earlier. It's good, but it is very sherry forward, and the profile is sweet. Sorry, indulgent. But that was the intent, and they got it right. I just happen to prefer a lighter cask touch, but it is definitely a quality whiskey, and it gives you what you sign up for. Like, you don't join a boxing match and then complain about all the punching. Loch Gorm's whole thing is big peat and rich sherry. And there you go. So I do think that this is a top quality sherry peat combo. I do think it's one of the better ones out there. And I would say that this is a step up from the previous releases. So it kind of does give me everything I want. And with all that in mind, I'm going to score this 86. If this is your style, you might go a little bit higher. It's not really my style, but I'm still giving it an excellent score because it is that good. For value. Now, before we jump into value, I got to do the thing first. Before we jump into value, if you want to hit Patreon and PayPal, you want to click those links below for Patreon and PayPal. Let's start over. Before we do value, here is Patreon and PayPal. Please give me money. Now let's do value. All right, so for value here, I wouldn't say that it's great value, but I would say that it is pretty good. What I do like is that they didn't up the price for the new 10-year-old version. This is the same price that it always was, at least in my market, which I do appreciate. Here in my market, which is known to be very cheap, this sells for about 85 US, which works out to roughly 63 pounds. And I do like it for that. It's recommended. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will bring us to the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I want to hear your thoughts. So have you tried the Loch Gorm 10-year-old 2025 version? Have you tried any of the previous versions? Have you compared it to any of the previous versions? So many questions. You can let me know all of that down below. Also, you can let me know what you want to see me review down the line. I'll keep that in mind for my upcoming videos. As I said, Patreon and PayPal down there. Those are patrons. They're lovely people. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye, guys.